Thanks for tuning in to the Fibrenews podcast. I'm your host, Johnny Ray, and in this episode, I'm joined by David Yates, the founder of Gigabit Networks. David has been round the block, to say the least, not insulting his age, but he's been in telecoms and connectivity for a very, very long time. In this episode, I get to get slightly technical. Now, I'm not a technical person, so I get to ask these stupid questions so you don't have to, and we dive into the surroundings of what it's like to build out a network. We also get to talk about his experience within the comms space, and of course we focus on things like interconnecting into carriers, the difficulties, the positives, what it's like to get customers. We talk about the industry, penetration targets, interest rates, and everything else in between. So a really good episode if you are in the consumer ISP world. You're either running a consumer ISP brand or of course you are working for one. We dive into the background scenes of what it's like to be in Dave's position, a founder of a consumer and B2B ISP. Now, before we get into this episode, I want to talk about very quickly the job board facility that we are releasing. So by Friday, we will have a job board facility that is completely free to use and forever will be free to use. So if you want to advertise a role, you can log in, post your jobs completely free of charge. And of course, if you're looking for work, please upload your CV and go and browse the available jobs. The reason we've done this is there's lots of consolidation and acquisition happening within both the consumer ISP world and the B2B space as well, which means jobs will be lost, and we want to try and help that. So the job board facility will be for the consumer ISP people, for MSPs, for resellers, and the channel, because there's a crossover of talent that needs to be spread. The more we can spread the talent across industries, the more chance of work being available. It completely makes sense. If you're working in a consumer ISP world, then your talents could be beneficial to a B2B connectivity player or someone within the channel who's wholesaling connectivity. So that's the reason we built it, and it comes out on Friday. If you're watching this, it may already be available. Just go on fibrenews.co.uk and click on job board in the top right hand corner. Register your interest if it isn't live and you're watching this on Wednesday. Of course, if it is live, please do use it. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoy this episode. It's a cracker. Where do we start with you?
I don't know. Where do you want to start?
You've been in the game for a long time.
Quite a few years now. Yeah. I mean, I've been in the game since in my early 20s.
Yeah. How old are you now?
Just turned 54.
Yeah. You're doing all right for it. You're doing all right for it, Dave.
Just turned 54. You know, it was my birthday last week. I saw you last week at Channel
Yeah,
Live.
of course, because you didn't want to go to Channel Live on your birthday.
Yeah, exactly. No one really does want to go to their birthday in Channel Live. But anyway, yeah. So it's 54 last week.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been more than 30 years.
What was your first comms experience?
Actually, it's been longer than that. If I think about it, my first comms experience was a summer job pulling cables in, for new PBX installs.
Everyone starts.
Yeah. So we all in Slough, believe it or not,
Yeah,
right? So I got a summer job working for. We actually did one at the Mars factory. We installed a new ISDX PBX. Remember those Plessy ones or
I'm young.
GPT? You don't know. But then we installed one of those. I didn't do the installation, but I did all the structured cabling and all that for it.
And what was the cable back then?
Oh, it was just normal telecom cable, Cat 3 cable probably.
Okay.
It probably wasn't even Cat 3 then. It was Cat 2 or something.
Yeah.
Right, but it was just normal multi-core telco cable. So I started off doing that. That was my first telecom experience.
And did you start off early? So that sounds a bit engineering. Did you always go technical side or were you sales side? So the different fans we speak to, we get a lot of sales.
Okay, yeah. So I'm one of these sort of interesting hybrid people. So I've got a real good tech. I've got an engineering brain, but I've got a really good commercial sense.
Yeah.
Well, even I might say myself. but I've done all right out of that, you know. So so I've got a techie side to me. Yeah. I like to get involved in things. When I was a kid, I was always pulling stuff apart, seeing how it worked, you know, put it back together again. Yeah. You know, typical stuff. My little son, he's 8 years old. He does exactly the same thing. I can see so much of myself in him. Right, it's absolutely amazing. My other two kids from the previous marriage, they weren't like that at all. So it's quite interesting, right?
Putting all your effort in this.
Yeah. But I mean, Jamie, the little one, he's just exactly the same as me. Always building stuff, you know, always designing stuff like that. So yeah. So I started off in the engineering side of things, really. Obviously, I went to did a bit of work with BT and stuff like that. You know, I never really liked that at all. Didn't
What
like
were you
the
doing
big
with them?
company culture. Well, actually, I was in the management training program,
Yeah.
which was not very nice. I didn't really like it that much up in Scotland. So I decided to duck out of that and started my own business actually with a credit card with a £1,200 credit limit.
How old were you?
I was 21.
Yeah.
Yeah. So started my own business at 21. Basically selling telecommunications equipment. Yep. So selling the equipment. Hardware, yeah. So
To end users
to end users, companies.
on lease.
Well, we did some of it in lease, but not that much actually. Most of it was actually bought outright.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm going to talk about small PBXs. You know, did a bit of cabling.
Yeah.
You know, some big customers like Lilly Construction in Glasgow. I did all that. So that's how I started off really. So. Again, bit of engineering, bit sales. I would call myself like a sales engineer because you're putting together the quotes and everything else and actually selling the product and then going and doing the job.
Did you do lines and calls and connectivity then, or was it purely hard?
No, because, well, we got into that bit later on. At that stage, it was still very much a monopoly. I think Mercury were just coming in with their smart boxes around about that time.
The thing that diverts your calls over a different network.
Yeah, least cost routing, basically. You know, so but these smart boxes were huge things. You know, massive sort of electronic device you had to stick in there and divert the stuff from the BT line to a Mercury line.
Yeah.
But they were the only. There was a duopoly then. So you either went with Mercury or you went with BT essentially. So I didn't really get into the calls and line thing until a bit later on in my career. But I kind of almost bypassed it. I'll be honest with you because I found a real interest in data networking, not voice.
Yeah.
Yep. So actually, my business in Scotland it was very originally named Thistle Technology.
Yeah.
Right. So that business essentially moved very very quickly into data networking equipment.
So it's funny when you say data network equipment.
Yeah.
Anyone I speak to over a certain age, and we spoke about this in another episode as well, like when all loads of the resellers were popping up, everyone was called like voice and data.
Yeah.
Now we don't tend to use that phrase like data when we speak about connectivity anymore. We say connectivity.
Yeah.
So what do you mean by that? What data was you sending down? Because it wasn't all about breaking out on the internet either when you used to put
Well, there's no internet really.
Right, okay, well that makes sense.
So I mean, this is going back now, mate. This is
good.
This is.
What are you sending down a pipe then?
Yeah, well, you're sending basically bits and bytes, but it wasn't IP traffic, right? So essentially, you know, if we're talking about modems and multiplexers, people of a certain age will get that, okay?
Yeah.
Bandwidth managers, yeah. So large companies would still start to ship data all over the country and internationally.
Yeah.
So how did you do it? Well, you basically got leased lines. You had to buy leased lines from point A to point B.
Point to point.
Yeah, and then connect them using multiplexers or modems or whatever it is. So, I mean, I sold lots and lots of modems, you know, to councils, you know, insurance companies, multiplexers, bandwidth managers to large fabrication companies, and the oil and gas industry in Scotland. So, I mean, we're talking, you know, going back in the day, these are things like, you know, you might have heard of Newbridge Networks. Newbridge Networks. Started off in multiplexers. Yeah. So you used to sell bandwidth managers. So you had a mega stream or killer stream.
Right.
Are we going back now? You don't even know these, right? A killer stream was 64 kilobits per second.
Right.
A mega stream was 2 meg.
Nah.
And that was the fastest anybody'd ever gone to, right? But those only came in very late on, and you know, in sort of the late 80s, early 90s.
Yeah.
So essentially, you know, Killer Stream and Megastream were the thing, right? And then ISDN came in.
Yeah.
And
just for voice then.
Yeah, well, ISDN was for voice, but we managed to put data over it as well, right? So it was actually an interesting time. That whole sort of digitalization, if you like, was an interesting time. So very much still using analog lines, but actually putting digital stuff over the top of it.
And you could do that by putting some clever kit at either end.
Clever kit. So we're talking about the days of mainframe computing, mate. Right. All right? We didn't have PCs that much then. Okay, we're still talking about mainframe computing, green screens.
Okay.
You know, so
punch cards.
Yeah, punch cards. Yeah, I still had some of that. You still had the very large. You know, we still had huge sort of hard disk drives. You know, these huge disk drives which stored about 2 meg.
Yeah.
Right. They're look like a fridge.
Yeah.
So we're going,
this is an easier way to visualize bandwidth when you break it down like this, though, right? Because you had a 2 meg line to a degree, and you're sending down bits of data through that path, and
It didn't matter. What did the 2 meg change? How quickly the data got to it, or how much data you could put through
How
it?
much data you could actually put through it. It wasn't really about latency. It's a speed thing, but it's about how much data you can put. It's about the bandwidth, actually. 2 megs is bandwidth, yeah?
Yeah.
So essentially what we do is you used to split that bandwidth up into different channels. That's what the multiplexer did. You stuck a multiplexer in the end, you split the bandwidth up into different channels. And you could have voice and data. You could build your own private voice networks over the top of it. So large companies would buy a megastream. Let's say an oil company would buy one from Glasgow to Aberdeen,
Yeah.
and then they'd put all their voice traffic over that megastream, so they're not having to pay for voice calls between the two.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there was never a problem of actually getting that connection from point A to point B.
There's always going to be some issues. It's all BT there, and but essentially no. I mean, if they had BT plant in a building,
Yeah.
you could basically put a lease line in. Yeah. I mean, I'm talking about selling modems. I mean, modems. We started off selling modems at sort of 4.8K. Yeah. That's the kind of speed they were, and then very, very quickly adapted. And then you had modems that could do 19.2, then 33K, and that's when dial-up to the internet became more popular, because as you could get those speeds, 19.2, 24, 33, then it became much more usable. Before that.
Kilobits.
Yeah, we're talking about Ks. Yeah. Not megs. So we're still talking about kilobits by then. I mean, broadband wasn't even a thing.
No.
ISDN was amazing because you get 264K lines basically, and that's when the first sort of I would call them. That's what Ethernet and all that was becoming a thing then. So LANs were becoming a thing.
Yeah.
And so basically, they brought in new technologies all the time. Ethernet, as I said, became a networking thing. But you're using things like Novell software operating systems. It wasn't using IP necessarily at that stage. IP was still yet to be widely adopted as a standard. It's a bit like it's like Betamax versus VHS.
Yeah.
So Novell was one of these major platforms.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody was buying Novell licenses. Uses a protocol called IPX. All right, I'll never forget that. And people started to build sort of Ethernet bridges, so you could put a bridge on one Ethernet network and connect it to a bridge on another Ethernet network,
Yeah.
and then connect them via ISDN,
Yeah.
and connect them via Killerstream or Megastream as well. So then you had proper data networking. So you could actually have interchange of files dead easy. So you didn't have to have file transfer protocols. You just basically shifted and moved things from one drive to another. So it was actually really cool stuff to be right at the forefront of, right?
Yeah, right.
And I remember selling things like the Ethernet cards. Yeah, we used to have PCs were big, bulky things.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the oil companies all bought PCs, and they needed Ethernet cards put in them. They didn't have inbuilt Ethernet
So to be able to connect to that
to that
data point that's coming
network.
in. Yeah.
Yeah. So we had to sell them an Ethernet card. You're selling Ethernet. An Ethernet card was costing like 400, 500 quid. And you sell 10, 15, 30 of it. I mean, you're making
single machine,
every single machine in that network.
Yeah.
There's some really serious money to be made right in the early days of this. I mean, obviously everything's become more commoditized, and the cost of everything's come down.
Yeah.
As the speed's gone up, the cost has come down. It's quite interesting, isn't it? So,
Did that business sell?
yeah, we sold that business. Actually, that business, I had that business. Well, when did I sell that? 96.
Yeah.
So I had that business for nearly 6 years actually.
Yeah.
And so we come through all that, the IP networking, everything like that, and eventually we became quite a big Cisco house.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we were, as I said, at the forefront of the IP game.
Yeah.
Cisco was obviously one of the biggest routing manufacturers at that time.
Damn right.
So we became a Cisco distributor basically, and a Cisco partner.
Yeah.
And so when we achieved that, that was, I sold that business almost on the back of the fact that we were one of the first Cisco partners in Scotland, essentially. So,
And you were what then? 26?
I was my 26th. Yeah.
Make a few quid?
Yeah, did all right. Managed to buy houses and stuff like that, and
Well, houses are around about 30 quid in Scotland
yeah,
at that time.
well, I had more than one. but managed to do all. I did all right out of that. And on the back of that, but on the back of that experience, it was an interesting experience looking at that business. Obviously, I wasn't building it up to sell.
No.
I was building it I always treated it as a lifestyle business, right? And so that taught me a lot.
Yeah.
Right? It taught me a lot that if I was going to go and do the next one,
Yeah.
then you really have to, you have to take control. You have to look at it and get it almost get it investor ready or to be sold ready. So you've got to do the right stuff, and don't treat it like a lifestyle business. But hey, it was great. I enjoyed it. I was young, I was having a great time, and I was doing something I really, really enjoyed. And I think that's another really important thing. You got to keep doing things you enjoy, right? But yeah, as I said, I sold that in the mid-90s, and actually, in the mid-90s, I moved south. My dad had a sort of telecommunications consultancy business, and I moved south to help him with a big project he was doing. He just won an agreement with 40 hotels.
Right.
Yeah, so
on the hardware side? Or
no, this is all on services, really. So he was a consultant. He helped them with, looking at the cost base and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
And 40 hotels were spending millions of pounds a year on telecommunication services, voice, data, you name it. Okay, I think they had some 480 hotels around the UK at that time. They owned Travelodge. Yeah. They just bought Meridian.
Telephones were a big thing in a hotel back then.
Telephones were a huge thing in a hotel, right? And of course, they also had to deliver things like
bill it as well, right? If you used your phone in your,
they had to deliver reservations from a central location. They had massive call centres.
Yeah.
Right, so actually they're spending millions and millions of pounds on telecommunications, right? And one of the things they asked us to help them with was, how do we rationalise that telecommunication spend, and how can we reduce it, and what would you recommend going forward? So it was actually quite interesting. So they were spending a huge amount of money on what I'd call managed network services at that stage.
Yeah.
Like the BTs and all this world would basically sell you lease lines and put kit on the end of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then to sell you a managed service. We've come back to full circle, but
correct.
What we sort of said to them was, well, look, if you own the hardware, if you owned that and managed it and controlled it yourself,
that's where your cost saving comes.
The massive cost saving is in the fact that you can now just buy a piece of string.
Yeah.
You're not paying for that managed wrap. You may be paying.
Who's going to manage it? They'll have to go off and employ people, and you'd help them with that.
Exactly. Yeah, but actually, we ended up doing that.
Yeah.
So we ended up doing that, and we didn't actually sell it in there to actually end up doing that, if you know what I mean. But it just was a natural progression.
Yeah.
Because we actually helped them build the network.
Yeah.
We helped them manage the network. We actually managed the suppliers to that network, and that was where TFM was born. TFM, Technology Facility Management.
Of course,
Yeah, and so that was born in 1997.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what, you worked for TFM?
Yeah, well, that was one of the founders of TFM, me and my dad.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. So I actually started.
All right, okay. There we go, this is good. Right, okay.
Yeah,
when was that then?
When was it?
Yeah.
Mid-90s. This is almost not long after I sold the Thistle Technology business.
So you were a consultant. That was your first taste of like comms as a service, and that there was some recurring cash coming in, and that's when TMS was born.
That's when TFM was born, yeah.
TFM, not TMS.
Don't worry, mate. It's easy mistake to make. There's too many
3 letters.
There's too many TLAs around, isn't there?
There is.
That's an in-joke for the telecommunications industry right there.
They will get that. Right. Okay, cool. And then let's have a little look at that area then. So I might jump forward a bit. So you've started that, you founded that company. Yep. What was your choice then in terms of products that you could sell and who the wholesalers were? At this point, did OpenReach open up, or BT back then, and you could start selling lines and calls? When did it get exciting?
Well, by that stage, the network, the telecommunications industry had become rather deregulated. There was not a lot of players in the marketplace at that stage. You had this typical WorldComs, you had the BTs, the cable and wirelesses. You had, I think, Scottish Telecom had just starting around the end of 90s.
Yeah.
They were starting to ramp up. So there was quite a lot of Verizon. There's a lot of alternative carriers, even Telecom Italia, you name it. There were so many sort of competing carriers, if you like, in the, not just the UK, but European and worldwide. So you could actually look at them, look at a lot of those carriers together. I mean, I think there's a consolidation, Sprint, MCI, and someone else. They actually had Global One, which they put together as a major international carrier.
Yeah.
So we were working with a lot of those guys on the back of the 40 deal, but also with other hotel chains and retail and hospitality.
Did you find a niche in that space then?
That was really a niche because we kind of understood what their requirements were.
Of course.
We understood about their central reservation system. We understood about their voice systems. We helped them with their billing, everything like that. So we were basically I think we're an MSP at that stage. So we were becoming an MSP with our own network operations centre, and so on. So we built that business up over sort of the period of, since 96, 97, 3-4 years, we were turning nearly 12 million.
Yeah.
On the back of those deals we won.
Yeah.
So that was a really interesting position to be in. And in 2000, we thought about going to market at that stage. So we looked at floating the company on AIM,
On what?
on alternative investment market in London.
Yeah.
So we basically went and seen some investment banks and stuff like that. We actually, and we got an offer. We were going to go, and then.
And was that so? Why don't you? I don't understand this whole floating part.
Yeah.
Hopefully it doesn't make me look thick. But was that a more popular thing back then compared to now? Floating companies and all that jazz.
Yeah,
And
'cause
what did it
I think
actually mean? Did you get lots of cash, or that's when?
Okay, so there's two things it means. One is you basically bring in institutional investors for the first time.
Yeah.
I say, there's usually a boatloads of cash involved.
Yeah.
Okay, quite a lot of cash, because the reason they go to the market is to expand the business, not necessarily to exit from it. So at that stage, we were looking at a valuation of north of 50 million, nearly 60 million. We'll be raising about 15 to 20 million quid into the business, and then that would be used for expansion into other things, right? So we go big. Right, it was.
And why float instead of going to get cash from? Is it easier?
Well, the market at that stage, the venture capital market wasn't really
That's
all
right,
there.
that's my point. Right. So yeah.
It wasn't as mature as it was now. And yes, you could have done that, and we could have done, but floating was a better way for us at that stage of actually raising the capital we needed, without the massive dilution to the existing shareholders.
Yeah.
So that was one of the reasons why we did it. 2000, we had a sort of a little bit of a tech bubble.
Yeah. My very first boss, Mark Janes, he had something similar when he was in telecoms, started his company, and then the boom came and something crashed and all the rest, and things went.
And so basically, we pulled it.
Yeah.
We pulled it because it would have been. Yes,
you pulled it before you got the investment.
We pulled it before we got the investment, right? So we that was an interesting time, because obviously we're gearing up to. But actually, the great thing, because we put a lot of corporate governance in place. We were doing everything, and we took some investment in from the banks then. So we took some debt funding in, and moved on. And did continued to grow the business.
Yeah.
So that was an interesting one. I sort of exited that business.
Yeah.
Off the back of what we were doing in the hotel hospitality industry, we'd basically come across a travel tech company.
Yeah.
And we'd been to China on behalf of some of our clients.
Yeah.
And I'd been to China and did some stuff there. And I was really interested in that market. And I decided, one of the things we'd done is we had a reservation platform which is web-based, which we were trying to develop. Yeah. But developing it in the UK would have been the wrong place to develop it, if you know what I mean.
Why is that?
The market wasn't right, because they're still using. This is not a greenfield site. This is the UK market. Yeah. There was a lot of incumbents in it, so you had some big names, Galileo, WorldSpan. They were all what they call the global distribution systems. Yeah. So big giant reservation systems. And but China didn't have anything like that.
No.
And one of the people we'd met actually in China was a part of in the National Tourist Board.
Yeah.
And we ended up doing a joint venture with the National Tourist Board in China and taking this platform to China. Yeah.
Yeah.
And basically became the biggest travel tech business in China. So I moved out of TFM.
Yeah.
And
moved to China. Okay. Yeah.
And people say, well, why?
Yeah. What, like proper like city centre China wise, and went mental with all the busyness and the bad pollution?
Or
was you in the country?
I was in Beijing most of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was in Beijing most of it. So I mean, 2002 relocated.
Yeah.
Single
or family?
Had a family, but unfortunately, that move, they were all supposed to move with me. Yeah.
That's sad.
But they didn't. Yeah. The ex-wife decided she didn't want to move to China.
Yeah.
And of course, the kids stayed with my ex-wife. So I ended up sort of backwards and forwards quite a bit.
Yeah.
But that was really tough.
Yeah.
So yeah, I ended up moving lock, stock, and two smoking barrels to China. Yeah, in 2002, basically on my own. Didn't speak a word of the language.
No.
Had a great team though out in China. We built a good team.
The culture's very different, isn't it, business-wise? Like
totally.
40 nowadays, like no drama. Then you go out and you get drunk and you fall asleep in the street. Is that
really,
true?
really tough. It's more Japan actually, that one.
How bad is it?
But China is very similar.
Right. Good.
China's similar. There's a lot of hard work goes on, and there's a lot of late nights as well. Yeah. And I think the Chinese really want to be pals with you, really want to be friends with you, as well as business partners. Yeah. Right. So that's part of the bonding.
Yeah.
Yeah. And China's got something called guanxi, which is relationships. That is what they all rely on, is their relationships. So, they'll do a lot of work. They'll do business with a lot of old school colleagues, university colleagues, because they know each other.
Right.
And I think and it's really important that you actually try and get to know them too. Anyway, we built that, but that was a company called Sihai Tongji in Beijing. Okay.
You speak Chinese now?
Yeah, I speak fluent Mandarin.
Do you?
Yeah.
Won't make you do any other podcast. But...
You won't? Okay. Well, where's your John one?
This is going to be fun later with a beer, isn't it? Right. So you do that. You do China. You sell out or you go under?
So I ended up becoming the biggest single reservations platform in China.
Awesome.
Almost, I wouldn't say overnight. 3 years in, we were one of the biggest single travel tech platforms, and the single biggest reservation platform in China.
Awesome.
Millions of transactions a week. Everyone was turning cents and dollars. Okay, so you can imagine it's a reasonably good business.
Yeah.
And it got bought by a very large American company
Yeah.
in 2006 called Sendan.
Yeah.
And Sendan owns one of the GDSs, and they owned a number of different travel platforms, like Expedia, for example, was one of theirs. We sold that in 2006. Quite a lot.
Broadband?
Sorry?
Then you got into broadband?
No, that business had VC and PE backed.
Okay, yeah.
So I was one of the few. What they called it, I think they called us round eyes, or guaylos. But basically, we was one of the few white guys to actually get in and get out of China. I actually got the money in and money out again, which is one of the first ones to do that, really. During that sort of rush, it was a gold rush. Okay, a lot of people would get burnt. I'd actually managed to get the money in, get the money back out. The investors got
just for context. That's why I asked if you went under or went out. I wasn't just saying that you would fail.
No. I mean, actually, failure is okay too, right?
Right.
I failure teaches a lot of things.
Yeah.
But that's what happened. So I got the money in, got the money out. The venture capital guys said, "Listen, this is not. Can you help us do more of this?"
Yeah.
And I said, "Well, do you want me to start another company?" He said, No. We want you to help advise us on how to get money in and get money out of China. Can you advise us on the companies we should be looking at? Can you advise us on the structures and stuff like that?
Now that's the good life, right? That's the creme de la creme, nice cash.
Well, you think, that was all right, that was. But I didn't actually want to go and work with just one.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
You want to consult for multiple VCs.
Yeah, so I could do it for multiple. If I could do it for multiple people, that'd be great. So I took a sort of a retainer from one of them.
Yeah.
I went back to school, and did a CFA course. Yeah, an MBA CFA, which is a chartered financial analyst.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, and basically what that does is it means I'm actually I can be a fund manager. I can look at sort of advice and financial advice. So I did that. I did that off my own bat, basically, and then went to China, and we started a practice actually helping venture capital and private equity companies, and also international companies, multinational companies, who just wanted advice on investing in the local market.
Yeah.
And so I did that. I did that for 6 years.
Yeah.
Now, that was really tough. Yeah, that was really tough.
Why? Because it's the pressure, or because
very high pressure environment. Yeah, you're right.
Dealing with so much cash, and the advice is so like, oh, this has got to be right. Because if this is wrong, this could be worth 10 million.
There's a lot of pressure on you. Yeah. There's a lot of stress. Yeah. And then of course you're burning the candle at both ends, because we'd already talked about this in culture of work hard, play hard.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, to be honest with you, I left in 2012. I was burnt out.
Yeah.
Pretty badly.
Yeah.
I was. Physically, really not.
Is that the reason you left as well? Because you had to get out of that culture because it's so hard to do.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, my girlfriend at the time, now my wife,
yeah.
she's Chinese,
yeah,
and basically said to me, David, you need to get out of China. If you don't, you'll die here.
Yeah,
yeah, and honestly, that was a real wake up call for me.
Yeah.
So I mean, I was drinking every night. I was on bordering on alcoholism.
Yeah,
I was very, very. If I wasn't an alcoholic,
easy to do, though,
if I wasn't an alcoholic, I was pretty sure I would be very soon. I mean, and emotionally shot,
unstable,
and physically shot at that stage. So I got out of China at that stage. Yeah. I basically sold up very quickly. Didn't make a lot of money on that deal, but I sold up very quickly everything I had, and
off you went.
Off I popped.
Where did you move back to?
Well, I actually moved back. I came back here, but I came back here almost via Cape Town. My mum and dad. Yeah, I know, a bit mental.
Go on.
my mum and dad had a place in Cape Town. I'd never been to South Africa.
Yeah.
And I thought that would be a nice place to just do a bit of R&R.
Yeah.
You know, I really fancied that. It was at the right time. It was their summer.
Yeah.
You know, and so I basically,
Cheapest chips out there.
Well, I got back to the UK and then sort of got a flight to Cape Town essentially, and had more than a few weeks, you know, in Cape Town.
Yeah.
And whilst I was there, I saw a business opportunity.
Of course you did.
Yeah, which is, you know, I was there just to relax really, but I saw a business opportunity in the fact that broadband in South Africa was so bad.
Of course.
It was the worst. Yeah.
Didn't they have a real big trouble with rolling out copper infrastructure because it kept getting stolen?
Yeah, exactly right. Well, they had quite a lot of copper infrastructure they did have a lot of copper infrastructure in the ground, but they were stealing it. Yeah. I mean, so the people would just come along and ripping it out of the ground and selling it for scrap, basically. Yeah. It was worth more to them that way than... So, of course, I mean, they moved to fibre.
Pretty quick.
But it was only really in the really urban areas. And I don't know if you've ever been to South Africa, Johnny, but it is massive.
Yeah.
So geographically,
and vast,
diverse as well. You know, so you got, and so it wasn't just okay. If you're living in the central Cape Town, you could get broadband. That was all right. You could get fibre, and it was reasonably fast, and it was okay.
That was a problem as well.
Yeah, power's a major problem now, but it wasn't so much back then. But you know, it was a major issue. Broadband services just was a major issue. I mean, I was in China. I could walk into any hotel lobby and have gigabit capable broadband.
Back then,
yeah. Because they went to fibre, they didn't adopt copper as anything. China, Korea, Japan all went to fibre infrastructures much faster than anybody else. So in Asia, I was used to very high speed broadband everywhere I went, and cheap and free.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I went to South Africa, and you're struggling to get dial up speeds in some places.
Yeah.
You know? So it was quite an eye opener.
Yeah.
Anyway, I looked at it and thought, well, I don't want to get into the fibre game, but there's got to be other alternatives.
Satellite.
Yeah.
Yes, wasn't it? Yeah.
Satellite. And so I set up a business actually in Cape Town.
Yeah.
And we started selling satellite broadband services using the HILAS satellite from Avanti.
Avanti?
Yeah.
They've done some bits in the UK as well.
They had some resellers. I think
online and things like that.
Yeah, they had some resellers here. They had two satellites at the time, HILAS 1 and HILAS 2, and HILAS 2 was the one that covered Africa.
Right.
And I did a fair bit of work on that. We did some work with corporate social responsibility budgets for people like Investec and some of the banks.
Yeah.
And
then
they sponsored services into rural communities and schools.
Yeah.
So basically, we ended up doing that. We actually putting broadband into schools.
Yeah.
And then the schools were used as a community hub.
Yeah.
Or we put them into a shop.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then in some cases, the banks wanted ATM machines in the rural community.
Yeah.
Because ATM machines were used to pay bills and all sorts of other things.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we ended up putting satellites next to the ATM machines so they could actually operate. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was quite a nice, interesting little business.
How long did you do that for?
A couple of years,
Nice,
you know.
yeah.
But it was a nice segue into that. I mean, myself and the wife. She came over. Obviously, to get back here, and we went to live in Cape Town for a little while. It was nice. We popped back and forth, and then she fell pregnant, so we came back to the UK.
Happy days. Yeah. And this, quite possibly, could be where Gigabit was born.
Not quite, not 100%. I mean, I did what I did is I actually went back to help TFM was still around, run by my brother Stuart.
Right.
TFM was still around in a slightly different guise, but so he needed a little bit of help.
Yeah.
So because he'd been acquiring some businesses, you know, there's a bit of integration work to be done, there's some consolidation and stuff like that. So I went back and sort of helped TFM for a little while. So I got back into the UK.
Yeah.
Sort of telco, reseller, broadband marketplace. Sort of caught up with some old pals. Started chewing the fat.
Yeah.
You know, what can be done here? It was quite interesting, and I sort of quite enjoying this again. You know, it was quite good fun. I mean, so again, like I was a bit like a pig in shit, to be honest with you. If I'm being honest, I really enjoyed sort of getting involved in that, getting involved with some of the vendors, getting involved with the suppliers like BT and all, and Vodafones and all that of this world. So yeah, it was good. Yeah, and what came out at the back of that was a relationship with City Fibre.
Right, and this was in the early stages.
Yeah, so 2018 met with City Fibre.
Yeah.
Up at Gleneagles.
Yeah.
Liked what they were doing with their city fibre city champion sort of stuff.
They're allowing ISPs to have specific towns.
That's right. Yeah. So I mean,
You would get exclusivity, or a couple of partners
well,
would.
there would be more. There'd be a couple, only a couple who would be like city fibre city champions.
Yeah.
So it's not saturated. They had lots of different partners, but interestingly enough, I mean, TFM was based in Loughborough.
Yeah.
So that sort of, there's a golden triangle of sort of Leicester, Nottingham, Derby. So that there was quite a cluster of small to medium-sized businesses.
Yeah.
This was sort of the stuff that they were doing at that stage was all Ethernet type stuff.
So yeah, I was thinking that because I was thinking, why would City Fibre be at Glen Eagles? But this is like the City Fibre wholesale, which was internet.
Internet. Yeah.
Internet.
Yeah, so they had, but City Fibre had bought up a lot of, but they built up a metro network. So they built up a lot of assets in the ground. They bought some assets in the ground which had been distressed, so fibre assets.
Yeah.
Some of them were the old schools networks and stuff like that. Yeah, and what they did is they built a metro network and they had a good
It's a metro network. What do you mean?
Well, a city network. So what they did is they connected up all of the public service buildings in a network. And then off the back of that, they had a core network which they could then sell off of.
Right.
So they could sell it to normal business premises.
Yeah. So they took all the cable that was connecting up all these schools, for example, and that would be what their spine.
Yeah, their grid, if you like, and then
put a core into it, which
Yeah.
is a backhaul.
yeah, backhaul, yeah.
And then they can go off from that spine and connect other.
Yeah, so as long as you're within sort of 100 meters or something of that fibre,
Yeah, you can jump
fibre
into it.
network, you could jump onto it basically at a reasonable price.
Yeah.
They had a couple of interesting products. They had one called the Ethernet Flex.
You could burst up to a gig.
Yeah, burst up to a gig. It's kind of a shared Ethernet
That's it.
backhaul,
The contention ratio was
5-1.
only on the burst or something, was it? Or is it on?
No, 5-1 across the piece. But I
But
mean,
no one else really had it anyway, so you're always getting one
so
to
you're
one.
always getting sort of a gig anyway.
That was a good product.
Really interesting products. That's the reason why we started the relationship with City
connectivity.
Fibre. So looking at that SME connectivity piece, so and we looked at those three cities originally. So Leicester, Nottingham, and Derby.
Fine.
And that was kind of where we based ourselves in Leicester.
Yeah.
Kind of central,
Yeah.
and Gigabit Networks was born off the back of that. We signed a deal with City Fibre in 2019, end of 2019.
And what did you have then? Because you've gone out and built your own network. So we've got both channel listeners and we've got ISP listeners.
Yeah.
You are a fully fledged layer 2 supplier, and you have to be if you want to go on City Fibre on the Resi side.
Yeah.
Did you have anything then, or you just had in your mind, I need to go and build out a network?
So what we had in our mind at that stage, Johnny, I'll come on to that. But what we had in our mind at that stage was we want to build. We want to just build we're going to be a reseller essentially.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're just going
On the B2B?
on the B2B side. So we're going direct to market.
Yep.
We built a business plan.
Yep.
Direct to salespeople out in the marketplace, selling to SME businesses, higher speed connectivity, selling the dream of everything they need and all the rest of it. Yeah. And that was fantastic, wasn't it? So we basically launched that business in March 2020.
Yeah.
What happened in March 2020? COVID.
Thank God I could answer that.
Yeah. So in March 2020, COVID hit. We've basically mobilising a sales force to into the marketplace, and of course everybody goes home.
Yeah.
Right. So like shit.
What can do?
Yeah. Business plan, marketing plan, everything went straight out the window.
Yeah.
Okay. Two good things. One is we didn't spend a huge amount of money to get to that stage. Okay. So the investment we put in was still fresh and still dry. So what are we going to do? How are we going to? Because we're building something from scratch.
Yeah.
We don't have an existing base to rely on.
No.
Nothing. So essentially, what do we do? Do we stop the whole project, which we could have done, or do we look at other ways of doing this? And so what we originally thought. Look, everybody thought this is going to be a few weeks and everybody be back to work. Didn't really work out that way, did it? So went through a number of different these things. So we, again, like I did in South Africa, I tapped into those CSR budgets.
What's that?
Corporate social responsibility. Okay. So I got some of the big companies in the area, right, to sponsor circuits into schools, into community centres, into health.
How did you start with that? You send an email, hi, we're a broadband company. Do you want to sponsor this connect? And what will they get out of it? When you go to the school, you get a bit of here's Johnny Ray's Bank Limited.
Yeah, kind of thing. But at the end of the day, it's giving back to that community that they're relying on, right?
Yeah.
So they all have these CSR budgets. They have projects. So Coventry Building Society, they sponsor 5 or 6 schools. Yeah. So they actually they actually sponsor them for books and
Yeah.
equipment and all that sort of stuff. Well, this is just another one of those sponsorships, right?
Yeah.
So who needs this stuff most? Schools need it most,
Yeah.
right? Because the teachers are still there, right? How are you going to deliver that to the kids? You know, so it's sort of and also care homes.
Yeah.
Again, another key logistics companies who are still operational at that time. They still needed this stuff, so we sort of pivoted into those. So we got some rather large contracts with the back. We did some up with the Leicestershire National Health Service, for example, on they had a project that needed radiologists, needed high speed connectivity, so we provided that. So it's some interesting stuff. So whilst we had a direct B2B relationship, it was through those larger enterprise clients.
When you're dealing with a larger enterprise client, and say you're putting a piece of putting a pipe into the NHS for an X-ray machine. Once the pipe gets to the building, what are you doing then? Do you hand it over to their IT team to then deliver it into their network?
Yeah, we'll put a router on the end of it, basically terminate that, and then give it to them and say, look, you guys do what you want with that. Yeah. It's still a managed service.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, from our point of view, but it's essentially just handing it to their guys. Most of them have got their own teams. They're just looking at the connectivity nowadays, whether it's DIA or private networking, direct internet access. Another one of those TLAs, mate. Yeah. So that's how we did it. So, but of course, there's only so much you can do of that, right?
Yeah.
There's only so much you could do of that. So we actually bought a small business called Skyline Wireless, who had an existing base of 4G, 5G connectivity, did a lot of work in rural broadband and stuff like that.
What, and they were putting clever kit on the end? With
They were
antenna and all that?
Yeah, they were putting clever stuff on the end of it. They had a good client base, and we managed to convert some of those guys to fibre and stuff like that. And they sold some over the top services like voice and things like that. So that was it kind of acted a bit like a lifeboat almost. If we bought it because it was in a bit of distress, and that we turned it around and actually generated quite a lot of cash off the back of it. Yeah. So it was quite a nice little project that. Okay. And then we went into you come on to your thing about building networks. City Fibre came back to him and said, look, you guys are doing pretty well on this, considering COVID and all the rest of it. You're one of our top performing sort of new partners. Yeah. There's an opportunity here to get into the consumer side of things. Yeah, would you be interested in doing that? And of course, at that moment, I said, look, okay, what they got then? I mean, they didn't have the RFS they have now. There was probably 600,000-700,000, maybe less. Yeah. But in our cities, Leicester, Nottingham, Derby, they'd quite good networks, and they're building quite a large chunk of that sort of RFS at that time was in those cities. Yeah. And then we looked at other ones and said there's also Coventry here as well. Yeah. And Coventry was a very mature build because Vodafone that was one of the first Vodafone cities. Yeah. Okay. And so we said, well, look, okay, if you look at that footprint, there's going to be about 500,000 RFS in that in those four or five sort of cities in that area. Which is quite a lot to go at, right? So, we built a business plan on the back of that. And, of course, at that stage, we have to build a network. Yeah. So we built a network. So we put high-capacity backhaul into the 5 cities we did. So the 5 cities we unbundled at the time were Derby. Yeah.
So who's your technical lead on that? So you've been going from a reseller point of view on City Fibre Ethernet, and then the consumer side, building out your network, it's a completely different ballgame. Well, where do you even start with something like that? Do you ring up your mate, like, I need to be in a data centre now. What can you do? Do you know what I mean?
Well, obviously, I've got quite a good technical ability, so I know the building blocks we needed, and then of course I've got through the relationship with people like TFM and all that. We'd actually built these networks in the past, so of course, it's a bit like who am I going to speak to? I've got a mate down the road who can help, and I've known guys who built this. So we basically put together a nice design. We chose our vendors, so we chose Equinix as our main data center platform. So they're a hyperscaler data center platform. We chose Neos for our high capacity backhaul. Yeah.
So this is funny, right? Because this is, to break it down for me, so you've got a data center where your equipment sits, where you need to somehow get on City Fibre's network, and then a backhaul is essentially a lease line coming into that data center that's your own connection. Yeah. So
So what we opted for is we opted for a local unbundling. So So we opted for local unbundling. Actually, that was all that was available at the time with City Fibre. City Fibre didn't have a national network at all. Actually, every single one of their cities was independent, and they weren't connected. at all at that stage.
Right. So
And
if you wanted to do Loughborough, Coventry, and
yeah, so if we wanted to do Leicester, Nottingham, Derby, for example, and Coventry, then you have to put kit in each of those cities and connect it to their network, and we did that at their fibre exchanges.
Yeah.
So we put backhaul into the cities.
and are there fibre exchanges open reach exchanges?
No, they're their own. Yeah, but
Okay.
I don't know what. Yeah, it's a bit of a misnomer actually. What they do is they connect the whole city to City Fibre's network. So, for example, in Leicester, there's 3 of them. You know, different areas of the city. They bring the fibres back into them, and then they've got a ring round those. They've got rings round those.
And are there exchanges? So like an open reach exchange is obviously like a 25-story building that only one rack gets used now. What does a modern exchange look like? Do you not get to see it?
They're like a container.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so you'll see some of these exchanges actually. You won't even know they're exchanges. They just look like a container with some power stuff.
Yeah.
So
On a secure place, I assume.
yeah, obviously in a secure location, but some of them are in warehouses. Yeah, so they'll have a warehouse and a container inside the warehouse, which is a self-enclosed unit with power and all the rest of it. Yeah. And that contains their fibre exchange.
It's good to visualise it because whenever you say
They've got
everyone
racks.
thinks of giant buildings.
But they've got racks. They've got rack space there, so we can take some rack space and we can put our own equipment in those exchanges to terminate this fibres and stuff like that. So there is, but all they're doing is basically connecting City Fibre's network together.
Yeah.
Yeah. They don't interconnect to anybody else.
No.
Right? So that's so calling it. It's not like a BT exchange where you've got lots of other kit in there, you've got lots of other vendors in there. Yeah, really, it's just City Fibre. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
But yeah, that's what we did.
So to unbundle that exchange, you need to go in with a piece of your equipment.
Yeah. So it's Cisco.
Yeah.
We use Cisco equipment. So we put Cisco equipment, Cisco router switches in there, connected to the City Fibre local network.
Well, literally just put a cable from one of their pieces of equipment.
Well, we've got fibre ring running around the exchanges. We've got so it's diverse. So if it breaks, it doesn't matter.
Do you on a daily basis? So because you're on your own network, these are all weird questions, aren't they? How do you? I would be well nervous that I have got to be responsible for. Now I've got customers connected and everything else. How do you cope with that? Are you confident in the abilities of what you've done, or is that just forever never going to go away because you can't deal if someone's broken in and suddenly picked up that container? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, but it's an interesting. That's a really really good question, Johnny. Because if you ask my operations guy, it keeps him awake at night sometimes.
I don't doubt it.
Yeah. But you can't stop you can't stop things getting broken. All right. So fibre is going to get dug up every now and then. Okay. So you've got major service outages. I think the key to that is making sure that the customers really understand what's going on and communicating to them as much as you can, and getting it fixed as fast as you can. So we've got redundant kit, for example. So if one goes down, the other one takes over. Yeah. We've got redundant links, so if one goes down, the other one takes over. There's only so much of that redundancy you can put in, though. If something really bad goes wrong, it goes wrong, right? And so that's stuff you just have to deal with at the time. Yeah.
Why do you need a data center if you're in City Fibre's? So I'm really trying to learn about this whole network side. So you've got your equipment in City Fibre's exchange, which is allowing you to gain access to all of those properties.
Yeah.
And then you've got a pipe coming into that. Why do you need equipment in Equinox?
In Equinox, because you still need to get to the internet. So
and that backhaul takes that connection from their network out to the internet.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So all that active equipment in Equinox, basically is interconnected to multiple peering points, and multiple IP transit. So we've got sort of tier 1 IP transit in 2 core locations. Yeah. And I've got London Internet Exchange and LonApp, which is peering. So we peer directly with people like Google, BBC, that. So essentially that traffic doesn't go into the internet to go back to Google. It goes directly to Google. It goes to AWS. Yeah. It goes to Azure, whoever it is, Azure. Yeah. It goes to the BBC. It goes to Netflix Direct, for example. Yeah. So you're giving people a sort of one-to-one connection, essentially. Yeah.
Was you shocked how expensive IP addresses were when you first looked into it? Because aren't they double deer now?
Mate, I remember applying for IP addresses way back. I had a huge. I wish I'd kept them.
Gutted, yeah.
It's a bit like Bitcoin, man. Yeah. I mean, honestly, I got them from Ripe years ago when we had TFM. When we first started TFM, we had a huge chunk of IP addresses. I think we had a /20, a /16 or /18 address, which is like 8,000 10,000 plus addresses.
Right.
And then each IP address today is worth about $35-40.
There you go.
Yeah.
Mental. Absolutely mental.
Totally mental, right? So yeah, IP address space. I mean, obviously the proliferation of IP, IP networking, IPv4 addresses are just run out.
Yeah.
You know, well, I don't think they really have run out. I think people are holding on to a lot of IP
Everyone
address
says
space.
that. There's like dodgy people that have had them from before and nicked them from a company, and you can buy them off them. Like,
Yeah, and there's a lot of brokers try to sell you IP address space. Okay, but yeah, IP address is one of the things that for an ISP right now is actually
gold dust.
they are like gold dust. So luckily we've got a few of them, right?
Yeah.
Quite a few. But I mean that's why a layer 2 provider has to provide its own IP address space, right? So we're a layer 2 provider.
Yeah.
You know, so we basically interconnect to a lot of different networks, but every service we deliver has to have an IP address on it.
Yeah.
You know, so that's what we basically, that's the sort of value wrap, if you like, that we can provide, as well as having a diverse and high capacity network to actually deliver these services on.
High capacity means.
Well, I mean, we've got multiple 10 gigs locations, 100 gig NNIs, so we've got significant capacity in that network right now. I mean, I think we've probably built that network right now to handle sort of 20,000 plus subscribers on that network. So quite a lot, and basically adding more to that is not that difficult now because we've already got the basic infrastructure in place. It's about adding additional capacity on the backhaul, etc., etc. So we've just recently upgraded some of the interconnection with CityFibre, for example. We've doubled the capacity with CityFibre. And that
you recently went national. I'm sure I wrote a press article.
Yeah, we went national with CityFibre in the last year. Actually, slightly before end of Q3 last year. So we went national with them. We didn't make a huge splurge about it, to be honest with you. We've just opened up the network, so we went national with them. So we're across the whole CityFibre footprint now. We can offer both business and residential services across that.
I don't want to focus too much on the resi side, to be honest, because we've got a bit of an opportunity conversation-wise, because you are one of the rare networks that has a wholesale offering on the B2B and a little bit on the consumer. We don't have to talk about that. But you have a multiple network proposition.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously we started off with CityFibre, and we're pretty much wedded to them for quite a long time. I mean, we've proven the whole thing on CityFibre. Then we looked around and said, look, there's an opportunity here to integrate and sort of aggregate up different altnet providers, right? And so we had, there's lots of different, there's about 120 different altnets out there in the market at this moment in time, some of which are wholesale only, some of which are vertically integrated, but there's no one place to actually look at any of the wholesale providers saying, can I buy that from one place or whatever? So we made a conscious decision to say, okay, fine, we can. It's on the back of our own direct-to-consumer business. We started this process, but actually, looking at it, it makes more sense from a wholesale and partner point of view to aggregate up those different altnets. So we started off. First one we brought in was Full Fibre. So Full Fibre had a very complementary footprint to CityFibre. So they didn't
overlap. So they're in.
There was no overbuild.
Side by side, so you could,
so there was no overbuilds. I mean, Full Fibre was sort of down the M5 corridor here, up round the top of Derby. We were sort of all in that Derby, Leicester, Coventry, and so on. So that made perfect sense for us. So it fitted our footprint really well. We then added F&W, which was further down, so M4 below, and sort of into Oxfordshire as well. So we've added that, and then of course we went national with CityFibre. So we've now got that full footprint. And looking at the B2B side, the problem with those footprints, they were very consumer focused. So there's very few businesses on those footprints. So we, obviously we want to be a channel player, and of course all our channel partners want business premises, right? And so whilst we had quite a good footprint on Ethernet, we didn't have a very good footprint on FTTP, because if you look at across even the CityFibre national,
2% of their coverage is
it's less than 100,000 properties. If you looked at Full Fibre and F&W, about 15,000 max, I would have thought. And so we thought we need to bring in some better business properties. So obviously we've got ITS now. which brings, I think they claim 450,000. You know, some of those, I think that's a mixture of Ethernet and FTTP, but I think more Ethernet than FTTP. We've got on the Metro network with City Fibre, we've got 150,000 Ethernet properties. So, and then we're onboarding MS3.
Yeah.
And we're onboarding Freedom.
And this is all for Ethernet for your partners.
This is all for FTTP and Ethernet for
FTTP
our partners.
and
Yeah. So we will basically bring them all on as layer 2.
Yeah.
And then resell and then basically wholesale them to our partners with a layer 3 wrap.
Yeah.
Okay. And they can buy it wires only.
Yeah.
If they want from us, or they could buy it as a managed service. You know, obviously managed service is more expensive, but that's the opportunity to do that. So we're not an ISP in a box. You still have to have your own. You still have to have your own sort of sales force and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that's working.
But this is what the traditional channel was used to, right? But we're very used to only having a handful of suppliers that we go to. We go on a portal, we see lots of different prices. Are you on net? Are you off net? Now, you won't say it, but I'll say it for you. You've smashed this space, to be honest with you. You and Tim Loveday, you've done very, very well. And I think that's because partners or resellers had very vanilla and very stale partners to choose from. You came in at the right price point, which I think is very important for resellers because not that much money in Ethernet anymore. So you've managed to hammer that somehow, and you've done really, really well. And you bring a bit more of a personal approach. Because I think for some of the larger players, you match the price with some of the larger suppliers, and you can tell me I'm wrong at any point. But you also give, like, Tim's a lovable guy, there's no doubt about that. You give that personal touch, which some resellers miss from some of the larger players, I think. Would that be a good summary?
I think that's a really good summary, mate, to be honest with you. I think that's exactly right. I mean, you know who the other guys are, you know, the big sort of distributors. I mean, we don't really compete directly with those guys because we're not really transactional. We don't want to be transactional. Of course, look, we still need to sell circuits, okay? And we still need to fill up the network, but we don't want to be just another transaction. So we tend to work with our partners on projects and marketing and, you know, all those nice things. And it's not necessarily about, you know, giving them cash incentives and all the rest of it. Of course, we have to match some of those cash incentives other wholesalers are offering. But, you know, and we do that, you know, to a certain extent. But actually, the more value comes from understanding what the reseller or what the channel partner wants to do with their business. You know, what is it you want to do? And we'll help you. We'll try and help you achieve that. And so, I mean, one of the things we set out for ourselves was, look, we don't want to have thousands of channel partners. We're in just, I think we're just over 100 now, and I think we don't want to add too many more. To be honest with you, what we want is we want partners not who are transactional, but who are basically delivering additional value-added services. And connectivity is just a nice part of that value-added service, okay? And the fact of the matter is, you know, what our services do is they allow you to deliver much more service excellence, because the biggest issue with any MSP or any over-the-top provider is if the broadband goes down or the network goes down, you get the call and saying my voice isn't working or this, but it's actually generally to do that. When you look at a full fibre product that we offer, they don't go wrong that often.
No, of course not.
You know, and it's, you know, we're talking about 5 nines here. Okay, so actually, and the speed is there for you to deliver even more service over the top. So essentially, what you're delivering here is really good customer service, and your customer delight actually, you know, is what you're looking for, right? You're not going to get those calls, right? So your margins are increasing on the back of it. And that's kind of the message we try to get out there. And actually, that's where we win. We win business is on the back of the fact that we try and understand what you're trying to do. Yeah.
Where's that going? What's next? Are you adding more networks, or are you happy with the networks you got?
We're going to add some more network. I mean, we set ourselves a target. Right now, on net we've probably got about 600,000 available properties. You know, off net we've just basically we've onboarded BT Wholesale, OpenReach, and Vodafone as well. At the moment, they're not on net for us; they're on an off net provision. So we're basically buying that and reselling it as a layer 3 product from them. But we'll be integrating them into our network as well. And we set a target for ourselves of more than a million UK business properties. And onboarding those two will take us over the million.
Happy days.
So that's kind of where we are on that one, you know. So I think we're doing all right from a
You're doing really well.
from a
You are doing
standing
really well.
start in 2020.
Yeah,
you
you're doing
know,
really well.
I think we've done all right, you know. So yeah, I think happy days at the moment.
Is there an opportunity if someone wants to be able to sell layer 3 on a consumer offering, or is that just too complicated for you guys?
We have done it, yeah, and we've already got some partners doing
Should
it.
have done my research first. No.
Yeah, but well,
Right.
that's not. It's we're not naming names or anything, but we've already got partners who have got consumer play, and they are delivering consumer services already via OpenReach or whatever.
Yeah.
And they're looking for a fibre play, and they
Yeah.
don't, you know. So, and one in particular is they're smashing it.
Yeah.
You know, so
And what do you give it? Do you give them access to every network that you integrate with, or you say, right, you can have access to City Fibre and you can do that? What
we can give them access to anything they want.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and unfortunately, because of the commercials,
Yeah.
some of them are different price points, right?
Of course.
Okay. But yeah,
it is.
they can have access to all of the above. I mean, most of them are choosing one network at the moment and saying, right, we'll go look at that.
Concentrate on that.
Concentrate on that, and we'll move our footprint away from that. So it's what they're trying to do is do the migrations piece first, and then look at the net new. Okay, so, and I think that makes sense because they're moving them to a full fibre product.
Yeah.
You know, actually, the price of copper products are going up. I think everybody knows that.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, and so full fibre is actually less expensive now for
Right,
the
yeah.
first time than
Yeah.
copper products.
Yep.
So I think it's a ripe time now to actually look at those migrations for guys. So if any channel partners out there who have got a direct consumer offering, they're already buying from BT or whoever, or Vodafone or TalkTalk even, and they're looking at they want a layer 3 product from different altnets that not OpenReach necessarily, but different altnets. Yeah, we can definitely help.
Good. There you go. That was a free plug. wasn't
Thanks
it?
very much.
Yeah.
That's a good advert, mate.
Yeah, that was, wasn't it? Showing my lack of research again as well, which is always terrible. Right, okay. So I think the switch off is going to be an absolute. So other countries have had a switch off. Do you know? So like, hasn't Germany already had the switch off, and we know from experience that it didn't go very well. Do you know anything about that?
Well, I know a little bit about it, to be honest with you. Yeah, I mean, obviously, I speak with the guys from the OpenReach guys and stuff like that, and they've got some interesting stories to tell. Yeah, I mean, obviously, Germany has had an analog switch off. Didn't go particularly well. I think they've looking at different products. I mean, one of the key things, obviously, about the analog switch off is there's still those legacy products which we need a solution for, and that's going to delay things, but it's not going to delay the stop sell. And it's not going to delay some of the exchanges being turned off and so on and so forth. So we still need to be prepared for all this.
And
right?
what happens when an exchange gets switched off?
Well,
are they saying that people on a traditional service will just get switched off?
Look, I think that there's depends who you talk to. Depends that you get different answers. I mean, I don't think they can necessarily switch off that analog service.
Correct.
Okay. Especially if it's somebody vulnerable.
Yeah.
It's an alarm system, but so that's going to be tricky, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So it's down to the industry to come up with those solutions. Yeah. And we'll get there. But I mean, in terms of stop sell, we're already stopped selling a lot of exchanges, and that's only going to increase.
Yeah.
So existing services that are on those exchanges fine,
Yeah.
but you can't sell any new services on the old analog network. So we've moved to different variants of those on Sogia and so on and so on. I mean, there's so many of them. SOTAPs. I can't keep up half the time.
Yeah.
I mean, but to be honest with you, if you've got a full fibre product, this is the time
Damn
to
right.
be moving to a full fibre product.
Do you think partners should use the switch off as a marketing tool?
I think they definitely should, and certainly those in the B2B space. Okay, so in the B2B
100%.
space, I think there was a survey done. I mean, I might be quoting the wrong statistics, right? But it doesn't really matter. What it is. It's a real marked thing. Only 20% of businesses, or about 30% of businesses, know that there's going to be a switch off.
Yeah, mad.
Okay, there's going to be a switch off. So only 30% of SMEs or even all businesses know there's going to be a switch off coming. They don't know when it's coming.
Yeah.
And they don't know what it means to
I think
them.
it'd be less than that. I think 20% would be a push. You've got no chance if you walked up that high street.
But actually, less than 5% have a plan.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So first of all, we need to tell them.
Yeah.
Tell them this what's happening, what's coming.
Yeah.
Yeah. You've got an existing analog service. You're going to have to swap out of that. There's an opportunity. That's costing you more money as a channel partner.
Yeah.
So that analog product is costing you more money than a full fibre product would cost. So if there is a full fibre product available, that doesn't have to be from me, but just go and get that full fibre product installed and actually future-proof that client. Yeah.
I think there needs to be some support from Openreach as well, much like you would see, and they've got bigger budgets, much like you would see City Fibre, when they lay new cable, they will do some marketing and they'll put things through the post and they will show a van and do everything else. I think there needs to be a bit of that from Openreach. They're the ones who are switching off the legacy network, which we can all agree with. It absolutely needs to be done. But why can't they communicate with the end user and try and support us and let them know some things through the post and things like that? Do you know what I mean?
Another great question, mate. Funny enough, I asked the same question about 4 years ago when they announced it. Actually, maybe 5 years ago in the BT Tower.
Yeah.
So they had a big ISP conference there. We attended. You know, they were talking about the switch off.
Yeah.
What was going to happen, and my question was, who's paying for this?
Yeah.
And
is Equinox say that?
Basically, the channel's paying for it, right? We're paying for it.
Yeah.
And I mean, I remember. Do you remember the analog TV switch off, move to digital telly?
Oh God, no.
No. So there's a huge government campaign about this because it affected consumers, right?
There you go.
Okay. Massive government campaign about it. This is what's going to happen. This is how you have to retune your telly. You know, blah blah blah. And on TV, print, radio.
Yeah.
Massive campaign. All right, and yet there's been nothing at all about
strange,
this, isn't it?
It is very strange.
So I sort of liken it to the fact that it is a bit like analog TV moving to digital TV.
Yeah.
Okay. Why aren't we doing something? Why isn't the government doing something about it?
Yeah.
Yeah. And why aren't they? Why aren't BT Openreach, or sorry, I shouldn't say BT Openreach or whatever, actually helping the ISP and channel partners? Why aren't they doing that?
Absolutely right.
And so quite rightly, it is down to us it's coming down to us to educate our customers.
Yeah.
And we really need to do that.
Yeah.
We need to get out there, and it doesn't it won't cost you an awful lot.
No.
Yeah. But we do need to get out there and talk. It's a huge, huge, huge opportunity.
Damn right. And why people don't use it on new business campaigns is beyond me. So you see some people like post on LinkedIn like, oh, you don't need to pressure customers about the switch off and things like that. And whilst I agree, there is definitely some dodgy sellers out there, and the majority of you who are a reseller can absolutely benefit and run a new business campaign on this premises. It's in the press. You can use the word government, which always helps you for support. Yeah. Obviously, don't do it dodgy. But you can really structure some aggressive campaigns to go out there to speak to new businesses. And I think we need to do it a lot more. I get that it's a pain in the arse and Openreach should be helping us, but still, you as the reseller, you've got a benefit, right? You're never going to have an industry change like this ever again in your life where something is going to be switched off. Whether it will be or not, I don't know. But that information is out there. It's in the public knowledge. Use it to your advantage. I think you're mad if you don't.
100%, Johnny. Couldn't agree more, mate. I mean, actually, exactly that. I mean, look at the full fibre footprint for businesses. If you add Openreach footprint and everything else, you'll get well over 1.5 million businesses that can be served with full fibre.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay. I mean, most of the rest of them can be served with another copper variant, so Gia or whatever. So let's convert them.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Definitely a message for the channel. Definitely a message for the channel.
And I know for some of those, so for a lot of traditional channel players, how do you go out with your new business opportunities? You're going to be picking up the phone, trying to book an appointment to push your all singing, all dancing VoIP platform. And sometimes that just doesn't gain the interest with the consumer, and you might find you'll have a much bigger penetration. Although broadband isn't sexy, but a switch off is a very poignant point in their mind. That's a bit of waffle.
Well, no, actually, funny enough, mate. We did a seminar, recently for the channel, for some of our channel partners.
Yep.
We did a seminar, and a webinar actually.
Yeah.
And we thought we were going to court a bit of controversy because actually we went out with, why are you selling this first? You should be selling connectivity.
Yeah.
Right? And it was exactly that point. It's saying, look, connectivity might not be sexy, okay, but it underpins all of the stuff you sell, right?
Right.
And shouldn't it be the most reliable, fast, and cost-effective you can provide?
And let's not forget, MSPs are very much coming into the voice space now. So if they're providing that connectivity, they've got a chance to take your voice away from you as well.
Exactly.
Because they're going to do it damn sight cheaper because they're charging a fortune on their IT.
It's funny enough, we've found, and a lot of our channel partners are not traditional resellers. Funny enough,
no,
they are MSP
based.
They are MSP based, and so those guys are getting it faster than the traditional resellers. I mean, it's amazing how many of those guys are coming together as well in the marketplace, isn't it?
Yeah.
So if you look at, I mean, it used to be the voice and telco resellers were buying up IT companies. Now it's the other way around. Yeah.
They're dominating. And it makes sense, right? So MSPs are technical first. And then when voice suddenly became a technical product, for them, it's like, sound. Like,
I can do that.
no drama.
Yeah, yeah.
But whereas some of our traditional telco players, look, we know how to go into a portal and configure an IVR. When it comes to managing a network and selling a bit of Office, like, I've still got no idea now. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's a lot harder.
Yeah.
So it was easier for MSP to convert into our telco world, but vice versa. I think we're getting into old school conversations now, aren't we? But
I think a rise of the MSP. There's definitely a rise of the MSP. I think I saw a nice, not to plug this competition, but Nathan from Geocom has got a really nice presentation about the rise of the MSP.
he's a genius in the way he speaks.
Absolutely brilliant, and he actually's got into it in real depth.
Yeah.
And the stuff that he showed is actually really good. You know, I mean,
It's a trust exercise as well, right? Because the MSP is trustworthy. I'm here under your desk to fix your computer. The telecoms geezer's like, it's a scammer. Like, get back. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's harder. It's like if you go out as an MSP brand, you're going to come here and you're going to solve all my problems. Thank you so much, technical nerd. Whereas you're a telecom geezer, they'll be like, get out of the door. Do you know what I mean?
it's not really traditional salespeople, is it? You know, it's more of that technical sale, right?
Yeah, which works.
Which definitely works. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
We say that, but there's still incredible traditional comms companies scaling because they're not afraid to do the hard graft, get on the phone and book the appointments.
Oh, no,
that the MSPs always will struggle with. The MSPs can get much larger opportunities, but how they, you know, they're how do I not be controversial? They can be a bit fluffier when it comes to picking up and being aggressive on the sales side. And I'm not saying that anything like a 7-year lease where they put 500% on the product is agreeable. Some of that I don't agree with, but for those who are happily there, plugging away, hammering the phones, trying to get an appointment, doing a good job to the end user, going off on a tangent onto the telco. This is Fibrenews, not comms news.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, not yet.
But yeah, okay, that was a good little point to go on. Have I got any last topics? Well, I don't think so everyone's talking about consolidation in the market.
Yeah.
Whether we keep this in or not, I don't know. I don't think it's consolidation isn't gonna. So there's been a big change in the way we can buy broadband now as a reseller. We were never aware about multiple networks. It was kind of left behind. This altnet boom has brought that into the visuals of the traditional reseller, and I think the way we buy broadband has now forever changed. So I think it's going to kind of be irrelevant to the reseller about consolidation. You don't need to worry about it. You don't need to get your knickers in a twist. It's going to be a positive because 9 times out of 10, the person consolidating is going to be someone you're reselling through. Have I got a point to this? Not really. Probably edit that bit out.
Well, okay. So there's going to be consolidators and people that are going to be consolidated.
Yeah, so let's refresh.
Yeah.
Consolidation in the market. That's going to be quite interesting, isn't it, Dave?
Well, there's two types, isn't there? I mean, of course, there's consolidation amongst the actual networks. You know, so like the city fibres, the full fibres, and so on and so forth. I mean, full fibre and digital infrastructure got put together by their sort of common shareholder.
Yeah.
Recently.
VX and Freedom just completed.
VX and Freedom just did the same thing and merged. City Fibre, Lit Fibre.
Lit Fibre.
And I think from what I hear, City Fibre have got a number of others who they are looking at as well.
They're very public about it. We've signed 6 NDAs.
Yeah, they're very public about it. So I mean, it'd be nice to know who they are going to be, so I don't have to interconnect to them independently.
Not the first to say that. Yeah.
However, they will obviously their lips are sealed on those. So, but there is going to be quite a bit of consolidation in the market, and we all know why. Everybody took in big investments, whether it's debt or equity. Yeah. Most of it is in debt. Let's be honest. And at the time when they took those investments in, the debt sort of cover was very low. 2.5. We're talking about an interest rate of 2.5% or less. Yeah. And so now we're up at 5.25% base rates. Yeah. Obviously they've got more interest to pay, right?
Yeah.
And so a lot of them are using stuff that were supposed to be used for build to actually put customers onto the networks, right? So they're not building anymore; they're connecting customers using that cash. Yes. So they're trying to increase their penetration rates and so on and so forth. Yeah. So I think it's a downward spiral there, and I think that's obviously you're going to get some of the smaller altnets are going to be distressed. Yeah. So the larger ones are going to pick them up. I mean, and that's going to happen. And then there's also consolidate. I mean, I know you had Nigel on recently.
Acquisition mission.
He's on an acquisition mission, and quite frankly, I mean, if I had the same cash that Nigel has, I would probably be doing similar stuff. You know, maybe not as just the same way he's doing it, but I'd say certainly be doing similar stuff to him. I'd be looking at more of the B2B stuff, you know, rather than consumer. But yeah, I mean, I think that there's going to be consolidation amongst those ISPs too. And of course, I mean, Nigel's a lead player in that, and I wish him luck with that. He's done so well so far.
Anything else I haven't asked you that you want to talk about?
Let me think. Golf season's about to start.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, so I can't wait to get onto the golf course and see actually get to play with some of the channel partners and stuff like that as well.
Yeah,
you know, so I'm looking forward to the golf season coming along. You know,
Award season towards the back end of the
award
year.
season starting as well. Looking forward to that and the warmer weather.
Damn right.
Yeah, it's been dreadful this winter, isn't it?
That should boost up the field salespeople, shouldn't it? The sunshine. Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you very much for coming on.
You're welcome,
That was a
mate.
cracking conversation, and we'll call that a session.
Okay, that was great. Thanks, Johnny.